Screen. Hopefully you can all see that. And I'll just double check. Yeah, we're live on YouTube. Amazing. All right, welcome everyone to this 9x live workshop where we've set ourselves the fun but let's say challenging task of building 5 AI agents in 90 minutes. This is actually our last 9x live workshop of the year, but don't worry, we will be back. But we thought let's go out with a bang. Before I hand over to our special guest and the reason you're all here, I just want to give a quick introduction for those of you who might not know us yet. So we're 9x. You can find us at go9x.com. And basically it's our mission, or at 9x, we're building your one-stop shop to learn AI and automation. And the reason we're doing this is we really believe that AI and automation together are the most important skills that you can learn right now as a business professional. And it is our mission to bring you these skills on a silver platter. And we do this in a few different ways. First of all, with our YouTube channel. Every week we publish new AI news, tutorials, and demos. We actually just yesterday published a full video on some of the best use cases for the new Gemini 3 model for business professionals. So make sure you go and check out. And as always with YouTube, subscribe to the 9x channel. I'll just drop a link here in the chat. There you go. Then on top of our YouTube channel, we also run these 9x live workshops each and every week, like the one that you're all in right now. This would normally be where I'm promoting next week's live workshop, but we don't actually have one coming up next week because, as I said, this is the last one of the year. We've had really, really positive feedback. We ran a workshop pretty much every week this year. And of course, we're going to be back in 2026. So if you do want to be notified as soon as we get these up and running again, make sure to subscribe to our Lu.ma. I'm just going to also copy that link and send it here in the chat. That way, as soon as we're back in 2026, you will be notified. And then finally, the third way that we're trying to bring you these skills on a silver platter is, of course, through our courses that you can sign up to. I plug these each and every week. I'm just going to drop the links in the chat so you can feel free to check them out. But with all that shameless plug out the way, let's get into the reason we're all here. And I'm very excited to welcome our special guest, Aron from Gumloop. Aron, how's it going?
Good. I'm excited. I know it's early here, so for our fellow Americans, but yeah, super excited to be here. Appreciate the invite.
So, Aron, what have we got in store today?
Oh man, I'm so excited. Honestly, I say this a lot, like I'm an excited dude, but I think, agents are finally buildable that are super easy. For folks who I haven't had a joy of meeting, my name is Aron Korenblit. I'm the head of community and education at Gumloop. I was at Webflow and Airtable previously. I've been on many webinars and videos with Jan, so super excited to be here. And yeah, we're gonna build 5 different agents today. I actually think 90 minutes might be too much time.
Oh,
Like a lot of
amazing.
people in the chat are like, oh, I've tried, I haven't been able to do it. And that's really Gumloop's mission, right? Our mission is to make anyone an automator, right? Not, we still need experts, and we have folks like Zachary in the chat who are part of our experts, but we try to make it as easy as possible to get started. I like saying like the floor as low as possible and have a very high ceiling. So yeah, I'm super, super excited. If anyone has ideas of agents they've tried to build and weren't able to or would like to build, I have like 4 prepared of varying levels of difficulty or kind of involvement. Let me know in the chat, and maybe we'll build one live based on what people say in the chat. Would love that.
Amazing. And maybe, Aron, before we get underway, because I know this is a question that comes up a lot, so I always would love to hear your take on it.
Mhm.
There's obviously many automation platforms now, AI agent platforms out there. Maybe people in the chat are using Zapier, Make, N8N. Someone dropped in Lindy
Sure.
before. So where does Gumloop fit into this whole thing? You guys are relatively new compared to maybe some of the more established automation platforms, but I guess that also gives you a bit of an advantage since you're emerging with AI already existing, right?
Yeah. So I always say that I've had the joy and pleasure of using AI automation tools like Make, Zapier, N8N for 10 plus years. I've done streams with N8N and all of them. And so I think exactly where you said, like we started in the AI age and we just assume that AI is just part of every single workflow, right? Or can be, or you
Yeah.
want to. So the way I would position us is if we have N8N on one side, right, which is kind of your developer tool, right? That tool that you need to understand words like JSON or API, or, you kind of get in there, you're like, whoa. And it's a super, super powerful tool, right? So
Yeah.
extremely high ceiling, extremely high floor as well, right? So Gumloop on the other side think of us as, we want to be the easiest platform to approach, but still be able to have that high ceiling. So the main differentiators, and I'll kind of get into it as we start building, is in Gumloop, everything is included. What I mean by that is external data sources, models, everything is included in your subscription. And whenever you'll use our tools, we always strive to make it simple, right? So that means letting you build with AI, as AI building for you, and build with AI in your workflows, right?
Makes
So
sense.
there are, yeah, and as we build, I'll both show you like the two big pieces of Gumloop, which are agents and flows, and when to use each. There's a lot of people in the chat kind of asking like, how do we get started? I have a coupon for you guys. So go 9x. So if you go to gumloop.com, create an account, we're going to be building at the same time. Use GO9X. You'll get your first month free. They'll give you 10,000 credits. And yeah, so Gumloop kind of, if you're thinking of the most advanced, the most high ceiling, and the highest floor, we try to be the lowest floor possible, but still give you that power of AI, right? And
Amazing.
I think as we're building, you'll see some of the differences in terms of the decisions we make, in terms of how you build in Gumloop, which comes from the fact that we've always known AI was a thing, right? So we've always used AI in every single one of our workflows.
Perfect. All right. So, Aaron, what's the best way to get started? Is it first, maybe do you want to share where people can actually go and enter that coupon code, or
Yeah,
what's the,
for sure.
yeah.
Let me start sharing my screen. We're all friends here. You should see my screen. So if you go to
Yes.
gumloop.com/pricing and then upgrade to the solo plan, all right, you'll hear, and then that'll give you Go9X will bring it down to 0, right? If you just don't want to put in your credit card, you still get 2,000 credits for free, and you'll be able to build today as well, right? So there's no requirement of using that coupon. That'll be good for the next month and a half. So if you're ever like, oh, I ran out of credits, go ahead and upgrade, and that'll be your first month for free as well. Cool. Are we good to start?
And
I hate
maybe if
presentations,
in
but yeah.
case someone's already on a free account, is there any way to add the coupon, or it's
So they
best
would
to
need
just
to
create?
upgrade to solo. So
Gotcha.
solo is our first tier.
Gotcha.
Also, if you DM me your email, the code is Go9X. I'm going to tattoo it on my forehead for the next hour and a half. And if you just want like, hey, can I get some free credits? DM me your email. I'll shoot over some credits to get started. Cool. And yeah, we're all friends here. Let me know in the chat. I have a very brief presentation because
Perfect.
I want to build,
Let's
but
do it.
90 minutes is a lot of time. So, and we got some great use cases in the chat. So we got some external, we got some bill of materials, market research agent, ticketing system, spreadsheet data cleaner agent. We can definitely do that. Restaurant concierge, some great examples. Keep them coming. Yeah, free account will be sufficient for today, for sure. Okay, so we bill ourselves as the AI automation platform built for everyone. So what I mean by that is we wanted to make it as simple as possible to get up and running with an agent or an automation. That doesn't only reflect itself in our UI, which you'll see in a moment, but also in the decisions we make. One of which is that everything is included in kind of your platform and what you subscribe to. I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about that once we get into the build. So some of our customers, companies like DoorDash, Instacart, Shopify, Triptease, Webflow, all use Gumloop. And the way they use Gumloop is that they allow anyone in that company to build automations and agents. And that's really key to how we view ourselves. We are not for, those 1% of folks who have a computer science degree or even with AI have to figure out what, a Google Cloud project is and configure, we really want to make it easy. Some numbers that will wow you, but don't really matter. We've raised over $20 million. We have over 100 integrations on the platform. We're a team of 20 based across San Francisco and Vancouver. So I saw some Canadian folks in the chat, shout out. Most of the team is Canadian. Cool. Okay. So how to think about Gumloop. So often when you're using an AI automation platform or automation, now every automation platform is an AI automation platform, they'll give you integrations, right? And then you have to go and get an Apollo API key, an Exa API key. Then you have to pay for those. Then you have to pay for your LLM models on top. So really what you're paying for is this kind of tubing between integrations and the fact that you connect them. We think of it as the other way. We actually give you the integrations for free because we believe that that's just kind of basic. But what we provide on top with Gumloop credits is access to external data like Apify, Apollo, which we'll use extensively today, and all of the AI models included within your credits. So today we're going to swap between GPT 5.1. We're going to do some Gemini 3 if we want to generate some images. And then we're going to use Anthropic, and hopefully Anthropic is fast today. Pray with me. We just got to get that. Hopefully we're not getting throttled. And that all goes into Gumloop. And in Gumloop, there are two broad ways to automate. Automations, which is kind of your Zapier's, your make, right? Your step-by-step automations where you can use AI, and we'll talk about when to use those. And then agents, right? Agents are those back and forth. We call those gummies, and we'll explain why in a bit.
Such a good name. Such a good name.
Yeah, gummy. I always say people always find it weird, but then they start building, they're like, Gummy's my best friend. I talk to Gummy about everything now. So Gummy will be, you'll have your preferences, ChatGPT, Claude, and then Gummy.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can get in the top two there. Cool. So let's talk about the difference between flows and agents. And this will kind of make sense as we start building. We're mainly going to build agents, but I do have an agent in a flow a little later. So flows are your Zapiers, your makes, your if this, then that, right? Gumloop does approach it a little differently in that we support lists, and I'll talk about that later. So you have a new lead in Salesforce. You want to enrich that lead. You want to assign the account. What about this makes it a flow? It is deterministic. There's step by step. It is going to execute this way every single time. What I always say that automations have three things. They have inputs, new lead in Salesforce, your starting point, a sheet, whatever it is. You have specific steps. Some of those could be AI, but they're going to execute every single time. And then you have outputs. This is what you want to come out of your workflow. Your lead assignment, your enriched, whatever it is, your blog post. That's very different from an agent, right? Think of agents like a Roomba, right? You give them a system, you tell them an instruction, you give them access to a few tools, and they're gonna kind of bounce around. They're gonna be like, oh, let me read this Google Sheet. Oh, interesting. Let me go to this enrichment tool. Oh, that tool call failed. Let me try again, right? And it's gonna bounce around between all of these tools, and you can kind of go back and forth, right? So sometimes it won't go to a specific tool because it doesn't need to, because it finds the data and it's training information. So these are two fundamentally different ways of automating a task, right? So if you use a flow where you should be using an agent and use an agent where you should be using a flow, it becomes challenging. So we're going to spend a lot of time thinking about, is this a task for an agent or is this a task for a flow? Now it gets a little tricky because you can have agents and flows, and you could have flows in agents, right? And I'll talk a little bit about when to use each one. So I have an example here, if I'm not mistaken. Great. Let's example where I have like a sales helper, right? It has access to my Google Calendar. It has access to Salesforce, and it can do a little bit of research about the user using external platforms. So I can ask this agent, what's on my calendar today? And it's going to go to Google Calendar, it's going to return it. Right? The prompt, what I'm asking it to do is going to change every single time. It does not have static inputs. It does not have defined steps and does not have defined outputs, right? So when you have that structure, you should be using a flow. When you are kind of going back and forth and you want to be able to have some non-determinism, you should be using an agent. So let's talk about the 5 agents we're going to build today.
First, and maybe Aaron, just quickly, we had a great question here from Kira in the chat, which I think your last slide sort of answered it a little bit, but can flows include agents and agent includes flows? So I guess here in that last tool, the research user flow, that's a whole flow, right? That's not just like updating a single record. That's like, hey, every time this agent uses this tool, I want it to perform all of these 6 steps, which is a whole flow in itself.
Yes. And so maybe we will go through the hour and a half if I start talking about not the nuances, but thinking about, you and I kind of both lived in a world where determinism was the only option, right? So it's even for me taking a little bit of like, when should I use an agent in a flow, right? And how I think about it, and we're going to go way more in depth. I don't want to spend too much time on the theory, is that if your agent is doing the same thing over and over and over again, you should build a flow,
Yeah.
right? You should add that flow to the agent. And an example we can build today is like, I want to have a brief about who I'm meeting, and I wanted to grab this specific information from my Salesforce, from my external information. Then you should build a flow, and we'll make that very easy. And the other side is when you want to use an agent is when you have like non-deterministic steps you want it to take based off of a trigger, right? So every time, the example we're going to use is every time a new lead hits my CRM in our favorite Airtable, which will be our example, I wanted to go ahead and kind of assess whether this is a good lead for us. And that's actually quite nuanced, right? We want to know what's the size of the company and things like that. So we're going to use an agent. But we're like, in 6 months, this might completely change, right? As agents get better, as flows get easier to build, right? So there credit costs, there's a lot of nuance when you should. So I encourage people, and this is what I always say, build. Just keep building and iterating on your. So we're going to build 5 agents today, but they're just going to be the starting point, right? What I encourage people as we build is like every time you interact with an agent or a flow is an opportunity to improve, right? Does the prompt need to get better? Does it need to get different? What steps did it take? Oh, I don't want it to do these steps. I'm going to go ahead and update the system prompt. So with that, I really want to start building, because for folks who are like, what the hell are we talking about? They're like, I've never built an agent. We just spent 15 minutes in theory, right? So first, I'm going to use a support escalation agent. Then we're going to create 2 different sales agents, a sales helper and an SDR agent. And that's when we'll build our first agent in a flow. Then we'll have our data analyst, which is my favorite agent by far at Gumloop, change completely the way I work. And then I'll do a special request live build. I have a few prepared. Cool. So first up.
And Aaron, while you're getting that set up, in general for these 5 agents, would you recommend for the audience now, obviously 5 is a lot in 90 minutes. You seem, you're quite comfortable, so it makes me comfortable. But should people just be ideally here first, like watching, follow along, and then at their own time play around with Gumloop in the recording, or it's really that they should be trying to build at the same time?
So for the first one, just like I would love for everyone to build with me really quickly. So just the GDocs one. So we're obviously going to go into internal tools pretty quickly. Gumloop is an internal kind of automation tool. Obviously it gets external data, it can do external things, but go ahead and make sure you're signed up. I'm going to try. I usually don't recommend building at the same time, but there's like, I like this idea of just people having at least one agent. And then if you ever get swamped or you're like, oh, I can't keep up, watch. Gumloop is super easy to get started. And I can share templates for every single agent that we built today. And I can show off templates, which we launched a couple of weeks ago.
Super.
Cool. Does that make sense? And then, let me know in the chat. Too fast, too slow. Cool. So our support escalation. So imagine that you want to know whether or not you can give a discount to a customer from Zendesk. So let's say someone's like, hey, a Gumloop was down for 2 hours. Very rare. Doesn't happen. But and you want to create an escalation path, right? To have approval to give a discount, right? So that's a workflow where you want to go into Slack and be like, can we give a discount to this person? And then you want someone to approve that discount and then create that discount, right? So why is this a good agent? It's a good agent because there's nuance, right? If we look at, I'm just going to give you some, and this I'm going to share so you can copy this. I'm going to drop it into the chat.
I think you might need to change this is always catches me on Google Docs, the general access.
Anyone,
yeah.
Let me make viewer. Sorry, anyone with the link can view.
Yeah.
There we go. Copy link. So go ahead and copy this, or actually you can probably just use it because you have view access, right? So this is like all the rules. Wow, a bunch of people joining. Whoa, crazy. This is like all the rules of whether or not we can give a discount. This was AI generated, but I'm sure at a bigger company, there might be 10, 12 pages to do this, right? So what I want to create an escalation path where an agent can go ahead and read this and say yes or no, can we give a discount? But I want to make this easy by integrating directly into Zendesk. So let me build that agent. So I'm going to go to gumloop.com. Let me go here. Let me go into agents. So this is our hub. This is where you're building. We're going to go into agents. We're going to create an agent. And when I say Gumloop is easy to build, like it is really, really easy to build. And that's what we strive. So if I think about what do I want to build, I want to have something that has access to GDocs. So I need to give my agent access. So I'm going to connect an app and I'm going to go to Google Docs.
And Aaron,
there we
just
go.
a quick question
Yeah.
in the chat. Could it be that Gumloop, should it be available in every country, or may there be some countries that may be
No,
restricted?
it should be available everywhere.
Okay. So yeah,
So-
maybe if you can't access it, maybe try a different browser or something like that. But it should be available
Yeah,
everywhere.
it should be working.
Yeah.
Um,
Perfect.
okay. So let me give a quick overview of the UI. This is where you're going to build your agent and test your agent. And it's also where you can use your agent. We have a lot of people using their agent from the web. Kind of think of this as your helper, right? Middle is where you're going to chat with the agent. This is where we're going to test. On the right is where you configure your agent. So I've said I wanted to have access to Google Docs. Now this gives it access to the MCP. I'm not going to use the word MCP very often. It doesn't really matter. Essentially, it gives us access to Google Docs, right? It gives us access to all of Google Docs, but we want to give it access specifically to one document. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to copy and say, you are a support agent helper tasked with, I don't know, I always suck at writing these, honestly, tasked with determining whether users can get a discount. There we go. So discount policy is here. And I'm going to drop that link. I'm going to save that. And then our agent is running. It's done. That's an agent, right? But the question is like, what can we do with this agent? And one thing I find, I don't know, Jan, if you find this as well, is people don't want to I'm like, just ask what can you do? Right? And it'll tell you what it can and can't do. And this is what I want you to take away from this session is agents are always a work in progress, right? What I mean by that is you're going to talk to them and hopefully over time improve their functionality, right? Now, I always need to figure out what do I do when the agent is thinking, which is always a challenge, right? And also we probably have a thing where it's like the start of PST working day. So Anthropic is going to take some time in answering. There we go. What can I do? I can check if users are able to discount. I can read Google Docs and I have general support. Okay, great. Can you summarize the discount policy? Now you may be thinking okay, what's cool about this? What's interesting here? Well, think of how many documents are floating around in your company that people ask you questions about. What is our vacation policy? Can I expense this thing? Right? And you assume that they have access to that Google Doc, right? Why not just have an agent answer those questions for you, right? So have a Slack channel where it says in your vacation policy or vacation doc, right? Go ahead and create a Slack channel where people can ask questions around any specific document. And that's an agent, right? So let's go ahead and say, okay, the first thing we want to do with this agent is simply allow it to answer questions around this document. And then we're going to integrate Zendesk. So we have a copy. There's folks asking for
I'm sending it
document.
again.
I'll just drop that. Yeah, there we go.
Perfect.
Okay. Man, Anthropic is super slow these days. This is killing me. So I think it's just we can try different models. This is actually a good point. In Gumloop, you can use different models and all of them are included, right? So it just gone ahead and summarized it. I have to I need the Jeopardy song, and AI is, now what's great about this is that usually you're not waiting for the answer, right? So I can go ahead and change the model. So you'll see in Gumloop, we have all the models included. A fair question is what model should I use, right? Now, Opus is its top model. Anthropic is usually better at MCP. The main distinction I found is that GPT will do tool calls one at a time, whereas Anthropic will do them all at once, which has an advantage and a disadvantage, right? So Opus is your top model. Sonnet is your kind of medium model. And then Haiku, which is really, really good once you have a developed agent, because Haiku is super fast. It's faster to like to first token, but I always encourage people play around. Great. So let me connect Haiku. Let's save it. And like we have our first agent. We don't need to be more fancy to that. Some folks are asking in chat, why isn't Gemini listed? Gemini doesn't support MCP just yet. Once it does, we'll add it in. We do have it in our flows section, which I'll talk about in a bit. Let's bring this into Slack, and then we'll add in Zendesk, right? So how do I bring an agent into Slack? That's like a first place where you can use Gumloop agents. So let me add to Slack. I'm going to copy this command. Let's go here. So I'm going into Slack. Now, it's a 3-step process. First, you have to make sure, I'm going to go to gumloop.com/credentials. First thing is making sure that you have Slack as a credential. And that's going to add the Gumloop app to your Slack workspace. Next, you need to go ahead and create a channel. You invite Gumloop. So I'm going to go invite Gumloop. Now Gumloop is in this channel. That means Gumloop can send messages. And then you paste your command. There we go. I'm going to say Gumloop. Gumloop, what is the policy for discounts when Gumloop is down? Now, 2 things are going to happen. First, when the message gets recognized, you see little eyes. That means I have seen the message. And then when there's a first response, it's going to go into a comment. So Bjorn asked, are Gumloop credits included? Everything is included. Everything you've just seen is included in your Gumloop credits.
Amazing. And someone else was asking, when you're doing this testing, is that also consuming credits?
Yes, because this isn't like a lot of people just use their agents from here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So a lot of people ask for a personal agent. Build one. Google Calendar, Salesforce. You would like, I have one. I don't let me, I didn't open I have a channel called Daily Driver, which has access to all the tools I use every day. And that's who I talk to. Customers eligible if Gumloop downtime, major bug, 20 to 50% discount for 1 month. Awesome. We have an agent. And so think of like every Google Sheet, every doc that you have people talk to. Like a good example I've shared in the past is we have customer stories in the Google Sheet. Salespeople don't care where that lives. They just like, what customer story should I send to XYZ? Create a channel called Customer Stories, and people can chat with it, right? And then you could upgrade and say like, okay, let's give it access to Salesforce. So folks are asking for the Slack connection one more time. Yes. Make sure that you have Slack integrated or add the Gumloop app to your workspace. Then in your agent, there's a little button, add to Slack, and you just copy paste this command. And your agent is in Slack. It is good to go. Now,
just one thing on that, for some people, depending on where you're working, Slack can be a little bit funny. If you're working at a company that has quite a strict admin, it may require your Slack admin to approve the Gumloop app. So if you're landing on a page after you try and add Gumloop to your Slack account, you might run into that issue. And what I always recommend there is first try testing with a personal Slack. You can create a free Slack account for like testing these out, and then you could actually go and show your IT person what you actually want to use it for. Some companies are a little bit, let's say, protective, which makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And most of our clients are enterprise, so we deal with a lot of Slack permission. We don't have an integration to Teams just yet. We're working on it. We don't have WhatsApp. And we'll talk a little bit about how to integrate with other tools like, Salesforce and things like that when you want to run on a trigger.
Super
cool. So we have our agent. Like, if you just leave with this agent, wow. Like, this is like the number of things you can automate just with, hey, answer this question about this document or this Google Sheet. But let's go ahead and kind of go a little further and show you the power, right? So I have Zendesk open. Now, let's say this is a test I've run many times. Let me create a new ticket, actually. Let me create a new ticket. Tickets. Wow, I should be better at, where's the new ticket? Add a ticket. I'm gonna do Aaron. There we go. Gumloop was down for 2 hours today. Can I get a discount?
And this is a very make-believe example, right? This, Aaron, this is
Yeah,
not something that
yeah,
typically
yeah.
happens regularly.
Yeah, I'm not Anthropic. I'm not down every day. I can't. We can't be. Can't believe my flows stopped working. Okay, submit as new. Let me go ticket 226, and let's say, okay, I'm like the agent, right? Like the support agent, the real human agent. And let's go ahead and add Zendesk and say give access to Zendesk. So I'm going to go ahead and add Zendesk, add selected. Let's save it. And now this has access to Zendesk. Now, quick note, I'm sure a lot of you are asking, like, what can it do? Like, often you may not want it to delete, to do stuff. So when you click into the tool, you can see all the underlying things that kind of integration can do. And you could turn things off. So maybe I don't want it to get integration, search triggers, get triggers, search automations, list automations, list view. I want that. Maybe I don't want it to remove tags. And this stops the agent from having access to those things. Now, a tip to make your agents more performant is actually to reduce the scope of the things you can do to to like the minimum possible, right? In general best practice. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to save it. And now it has access to Zendesk. So I'm going to say, first, and the instructions is how you guide the agent to understand when to use a tool, when to not use a tool, what kind of workflow do you want it to do. So I'm going to say first, first, I would say the user will give you, every time someone joins, it stops me from typing, will give you a Zendesk ticket number, ticket information, confirm the details with the user, and then assess whether they are eligible for a discount. Now, could we build a flow for this? Yes. Would it be annoying? Absolutely. Right? Because what if the person gives an email? What if the person gives a Zendesk ticket? What if the person says, yo, you know what I mean? An agent is much better at handling those nuances. Uh, um, so let's save that. And our agent now has access to Zendesk. So let's go into
And
Slack.
Aaron, just
Yeah, go
just
ahead.
on this one, because here for like connecting Zendesk itself, in your case, like you when you created, because here you just added Zendesk the app, but the configuration that happens here, right in the credentials section, that you just do
Yes.
this once, and
Yes.
then once you create authenticate an app, then you can use it in many gummies and
Exactly.
many flows.
And this
Yep.
is a big distinction with Gumloop. Let me actually, you're right. I did that a little fast because I'm already authenticated. Let me go into a tool I'm not authenticated into, like Affinity, right? So it's going to say connect. I click connect and we're going to add the credential. It's going to bring you into an OAuth flow. You don't need to create, like for most tools, you don't need to create AP. Like if they support OAuth, we will, OAuth being like sign in with Google or, sign in with whatever. Once you've signed in once, you're good to go across all flows and agents.
Awesome.
So that was a little, you're right. Let me remove affinity. So Zendesk, you'll create the setup and you're good to go. Okay. So let me go here. Let me go back into Slack. Now this has access to Zendesk, right? Let me save it. And I'm going to say, what was the ticket number? Ticket number. All right. Hey, Gumloop. Ah. Hey, Gumloop. I'm working on 286. Can I give them a discount? It's freezing here in the studio. So
It's probably
first,
the best way to get for performance, I guess. It'd be too warm and cozy, you'd probably get tired.
yeah, exactly. So it sees the message, right? And then you see the tool calls. So
That's
this is
awesome.
saying, hey, I'm going to Zendesk. I'm going to Google Docs. I'm reading both of those. And then it's going to go ahead and assess, right? In like, I don't know about you. Every time an agent, I'm like, wow, I didn't have to, um, like it's just, yeah, it'll just do it and then it kind of handles it in the background and I can go back to my work, right? And then when it comes back I get an answer and it can update information, it can do all of that. So once this comes back, hopefully it'll say yes, right? I'm seeing I had an error and it's going to keep. Okay, there we go. I've got yes, they are illegible. And what's great, you'll notice it was like, oh, I got an error. And it did it again. Like it kept going. And that's what's really cool about agents, which is very different from a flow. A flow fails, it like sits down. It says, oh, I'm done. Nothing I can do. Right. Whereas here it was like, oh, I failed. Let me go ahead and figure this things out. And then I could say, okay, that's awesome. That's awesome. I've given them a 50%, 20% discount. Can you add a note to the ticket? So it understands what a note is. And again, this is something that like in the flow, I would have had to tell it before that it's got to build, notes ahead of time. But here it can just figure it out. So we can add additional steps if we need to, right?
And I guess that's where it's super important to like untick in that Zendesk section where if you don't want it to touch a certain object or don't want it to do a certain thing, because like you said, because we're just chatting in plain language, sometimes things can go awry, right? And that's where exactly you want to make sure, okay, this Zendesk agent can update tickets, close ticket, add notes, but maybe not like delete a user, for instance.
Yeah. So what's funny is yesterday I was building a flow where I give it access to Slack and I said, respond in the creator experts channel. And I misspelled the creators experts channel. So it had tried to send a message and it's like, oh, it seems like that channel doesn't exist. Let me create it. So it created the channel, then sent a message in that channel. There we go. I've added a private note to the ticket, 286. Discount applied for 1 month. Let me go here. And then boom, we have that ticket, right? And like, if you just leave with this agent or this concept of an agent, you're already 90% ahead of the game, right? Because a lot of people on social are like, oh, look at my 12-step agent and blah, 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 right? Like I always say like, great, now you have an agent. You can start iterating on this instructions. Like what are people doing that they shouldn't do? Do you want to add additional steps? Should it have additional tools, right? And like that is an agent.
And maybe on this one as well, like I noticed some people saying, what's with like Zendesk, for instance. Zendesk is a paid, like Zendesk is a tool that it doesn't even have a free tier. It's a paid account. Typically, when you're working with business apps, they will involve paid accounts. So when we're doing these live demonstrations, it's not always that we can, it's very hard to create something that's both meaningful for businesses, but also free for everyone to use. So what I would really recommend everyone here is you can see how easy it is to like add the Google Docs and pull in that information. And then whether it's, if you want to play around with it and that it's logging the ticket information to a Google Sheet or whatever app that you're actually using. And that way, just what Aaron showed here of just how quick and easy it is to spin something like this up.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, if you don't pay for any SaaS applications, Gumloop is not going to be super useful to you. So, the value of Gumloop is using as a glue for the many things that your organization does, right? Of like, hey, we work across all of these applications. How do I let people access the information they need to? And so I have another one that was good for the first one. That was like, if you leave this today with like, I can connect to Google Sheets, I can connect to Google Docs, I can have it ask questions. You're honestly much more advanced in terms of agents and automation than a lot of folks, and iterate on that. So really start small. And I don't like, this is what I think people struggle with is get started. Every interaction with an agent is an opportunity, right? If it makes a mistake, ask it, what could you have done differently? What can I add to your instructions? And this is what is actually a really good segue into my next one, right? Awesome. Our second one is a sales helper, right? So this is actually came, and like, we're going to build some simple agents and then we'll get into the more nitty gritty in the next 45 minutes. Maybe 5 was ambitious. You were right, Jan. We'll try to get as many as done as possible. Let's go ahead and say, okay, this is actually a customer came to us and said, hey, our salespeople hate updating Airtable. They hate updating Salesforce. They hate updating whatever it is. Can we build an agent to make it easy for them to update information, right? I'm going to use Airtable as an example because don't worry if you don't use Airtable, it doesn't matter. What I want you to think about is that every CRM is structured in a different way, right? So every single CRM that you've ever used has its own structure that the agent doesn't know. So let's go into our sales CRM. Again, This is, don't worry if you've never touched Airtable. You've got opportunities, you've got interactions, you've got accounts, and you've got contacts, right? Let's say I want to be able have our sales team be like, add this contact, right? Or go ahead and update this opportunity. And I want it to be able to do it in Slack or with an agent. The challenge you're going to face is your agent has no idea how this Airtable is structured. So what I want you to take away from the next kind of section is how do I help the agent understand so it can effectively do its job? Okay, so let's go back into Gumloop. Let's go into here. I'm going to go back into agents. Let's create an agent. Great. Now, what do? We connect Airtable. Let's save that and say, hey, you are a sales helper agent. Now, remember, when you give access to Airtable, you're giving access to all Airtable bases, right? So the whole structure, right? Or whatever your admin permissions are, you probably don't want to give it access. I'm going to say, you know, the Airtable sales CRM you have to update is here. So we're going to paste, and we're going to make this easier over time where you can actually like drop down and select which table and what we call resources and MCP, right? We're working on that. Now, what do you do from here? Like, it's going to, if I say, hey, update this contact, it's going to, like, what I always say when I teach agents is agents have no idea what you're doing. They wake up and they're like, oh, what is this Airtable base? Let me like look around in it. And you're wasting resources, you're wasting time, you're wasting credits, and you're increasing the chance that they make a mistake. So the second thing I want you to leave this session with is when you have a tool, right, that you're going to use regularly, you can actually have the agent write its own instructions. This is super meta. So I'm going to be explore the Airtable base, so structure, and write yourself instructions to effectively query it. I want you to be able to read, update, create, and no, not delete records in that base.
And a great question here from Chris in the chat. How different would the process be if instead of Airtable, we use Salesforce?
The same, right? And you know, what's really important as you build is every interaction with an agent is an opportunity to improve. Like, boom, it just wrote like great instructions for itself. It gave its field, like I would never know. I worked at Airtable. I was the guy who taught thousands of people Airtable. I would have never thought to take the time to like write every single field ID and things like that, right? And it's like super good. So it's got the views. It's going to write itself like 2-3 pages of instructions, right? So once it's done, I'm going to copy this into its instructions so that when it wakes up and it's like, oh, you want me to update Airtable? Oh, I know what the Airtable base looks like. I can now effectively update it, right? And then you can start doing like what fields are required, you know, what fields are not required, and you can add those to the instructions. So like, and honestly, what's really funny is AI loves to please, right? So it like followed my CRUD structure very, very clearly, right? So then there's a question like, and then you instruct the agent. Yeah, so let me just copy this. I'm going to copy this. Bam. I'm going to add it to my instructions. I actually had a fifth agent. I'm going to bump it up because people are really interested in the chat, which is like our data analyst. I'll do it after, and then we'll do the SDR one. And then we'll have 4, which will, you know, be really impressive for today. Okay, great. Like now it understands. So I'm going to be like, okay, what deals? I just got to, let me go look. What deals, or what opportunities does Casey have in very high? What opportunities, what ops does Casey have in very high urgency? So you'll notice in the reasoning, oh, it figured out the owner field, the priority field, because I've instructed it, given it instructions. So now it's going to be 10x faster. It's going to use less tokens. Great. Has 3 opportunities in very high, and it detailed them to me. Awesome. Right? And like, okay, like this is awesome. Let's go ahead and copy this and let's bring it to Slack. because that's where we want this agent to live, right? So let's go here, sales helper. I already have Gumloop. I'm just going to paste that command. I'm going to say, hey, Gumloop, talking to Lucy so Lucy dot, chief at salesforce.com. She's the CMO. Do we have her in our contacts in the CRM? And so what we're hoping this agent does is that looks for Lucy, looks for that email, identifies whether she's there, and then if not, adds it, right?
And maybe, Aaron, while that's loading, another great question from Kira in the chat is, can you place basic instructions on what you're trying to achieve with the agent and then basically ask it how it would structure the system prompt to achieve that outcome?
Absolutely. That's actually exactly what I would do every single time.
Yeah.
Right. And what's great is that if it fails, this is the pro tip I want people to take away with. If an agent does the wrong thing or does something you like, you can ask it, what can I add to your instructions such that the next time, you do this effectively? Like, what mistake did you make? Right. So that the next time you can do it. Right. And so, yeah, we're really getting, someone mentioned that we're getting like used to just waiting. And this is, there we go. So it's listing the records in Airtable.
What I really like about this flow in Slack, because obviously a lot of people now is like explaining AI agents as sort of think of them as digital employees. And this is that exact flow, right? Of like when you'd have someone in your team who's a content writing expert and you want some help on that blog article you're working on, you would just at them and write the request, right? Of course, here you need to do a bit of setup to begin with, but you really are creating these digital employees that are working where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I hesitate on the digital employees because it often puts agents as this like too broad of skill set, right? I think in most cases, they're very good at certain tasks. And what I want people to remember is that you build an agent, great. Every day, 10% better, right? Like, how do you make this agent, right? Like a good example is if you have multiple people talking in this thread, right? So what you can do in the settings of the agent, let me go back into the agent. No, it's sales helper right here. You can go into settings. We respond on every message. You can make it only on mentions. So only if you mention Gumloop, right? So let me save that. And now I can go back to Slack. So, oh, weird. I thought they were there. Right? It's not going to trigger a message, right? Because it's on a sentence. So Gumloop, can you add them? Now Gumloop is going to go ahead and add them. And just a few examples that, in this vein of in Slack, and we're going to go away from Slack in the next one. Let me do the data analyst, which is my favorite. And then we'll do the AI SDR, and then we'll have ample time to kind of, there we go. So it created Lucy and we're good to go, right? So now I want to show you my favorite agent. I know I was supposed to show you the AI SDR, but we're going to move away from Slack in a moment, right? Because Slack is not the only place where you want to be using agents, but it's the more complex, involved use case. So we have this agent we call Gumball, which has access to basically most things at Gumloop. So it has Linear for our ticketing system. It has Slack. It can generate images. But the main integration is with BigQuery. BigQuery is like our data layer here at Gumloop. And as a marketer, when I was at Webflow or Airtable before, if I was like, I want to run a campaign for everyone who hasn't used credits in the last 2 weeks, that was like a 2-week thing, right? Because I had to go to the data team. I had to figure it out. So what we've done is over time, we've created this agent. And we've given it very clear instructions of how to query our BigQuery. Really hard to say. So just like I showed you before, we said, hey, analyze all of our BigQuery and write yourself instructions. And every time we interact with it, it improves, right? Because it makes a mistake. And so over time, we've built this amazing agent. And it can also generate images, which is one of my favorite parts. So let me start a new chat and say, hey, Gumball. Very important to be nice to the AI. We never know what's going to happen. how many credits? How many credits? I'm going to use myself because I don't want to share any PII or anything. How many credits has Aron at gumloop.com used in the last 7 days? So for folks who are not marketers, who've never worked at a larger company, this type of data is not accessible. Not It's accessible. It's just I have to write the SQL query. I have to know like 50 tables. You have to do so much things, right? But now with Gumball or with Gumloop, like it's just usable, right? And it's using that same architecture that I showed you a moment ago with Airtable, right?
And on the flip side as well, this is the type of request that drives BI people nuts, right? Because it's like, why do I want to spend my time finding the usage for one specific person? Where for the
Right.
marketer, it's super valuable, but for
Yeah.
the BI person is like they have to stop what they're doing, this big project, to go and find this one piece of information from someone in marketing.
Yeah. And what's great about this is like people are always like, how do you know it's right or wrong? Well, I can run it for myself, or I can get an as a marketer, I have an intuition, right? And I can spot check certain things. Like I'm gonna be honest, sometimes it tells me things I'm like, this is completely wrong, right? But then I could be like, why did you get it wrong? So a good example, right in our so we say be mindful of to aggregate results, not blow out your context window. We say start with 100, turn it back to the user, right? And that over time, right? So like if a user asks about agent, we'll use the gummy interactions table, right? Initially it was confused that we would say agent, but in our data it's called a gummy, right? So we add instructions to it. And then let me say, okay, awesome. Can you generate a graph of usage per day split by agents versus flows? So you have image generation included in every single agent. You can select which model. So some folks mentioned Gemini. So we have that integration into the image model, right? So now it's going to go ahead and run a few more SQL queries to understand this information, right? Like it needs it split out by day. And then it's going to go ahead and generate an image. Let me create a generate visualization. This will work in Gumloop or in Slack. It might have been a little cooler to show you in Slack. So if some folks mentioned, like if you have executives who just like, oh, like what's our revenue? How many people signed up? Maybe at the end of the day, let's go ahead and say, uh, how many people use the Go 9X coupon? I'll run that and I'll be able to do 3 weeks from now, like, can you do a cohort analysis of Go 9X users versus, other types of users? And I could just run it. Boom. Like, better than anything I could do, right? Yeah, super cool. If this was like a talk, I would be clapping for Gemini and Gummy. So data analyst, super, super easy. If your data lives in BigQuery, great. If it lives in Airtable, if it lives in anywhere, you can go ahead and what I want you to remember is start by saying, hey, explore the data, write yourself instructions to query the data effectively, right? And then use that as a starting point. Now, cool, crazy. I agree. It's crazy. And the thing that makes this crazy, I think, is that they're not hard to build. Just add a few integration and I'll be honest, like where people stop is like, oh, it's not perfect from day one, and that's an agent. It's an intern. Think of it as like a super genius intern, right? They're like they know everything, but you got to tell them about your business. You got to help them help themselves. There's some questions. How do we use Devin? This is actually a really cool workflow. Whenever someone pulls up a bug, we'll add it to linear, right? So it'll be like, hey, can you add this to linear? So if there's a thread, Gumloop will read the whole thread. I can show you an example in a bit. And then if it's an easy task, we'll actually kick off Devin to kind of start working on a problem, on fixing the problem. Then we'll add that to the ticket. Cool. There's some questions. So
And
Amit, that's
Aaron,
how we use Devin.
a lot of questions around, do you have integration with X? Do you have integration with Y? Is the right place? Can I share them the link of the Gumloop MCP listing? Would that be the best
Yes,
place
that's one start. You can also just see all of these. So these are all the ones that are available. We're adding a bunch every single day. We prioritize kind of our larger clients, obviously. So we have things like Tableau, and that's why you might see some things like sales. Like I use Salesforce every day now because we wanted to use it as part of because so much of our clients, we have one of the not best, but like one of the most fun Salesforce integrations. I do think we have a Monday.com. Yes. Asana as well. So you can do things like update. And these are like, we build our own MCP integrations, right? We're not third, like there's a level of care into each one of these. So it works nicely with Gumloop and specifically with MCP nodes, which we'll talk about in a minute. Okay. Let's go into agents in flows. So far, the starting point for this agent has been this chat or Slack. So by the way, this is a Gumball. You can use Gumball. I think I might have lost the audio. Just give me a sec. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can still hear you. Yeah.
Okay, I still have you in one ear. If that stops, I'll switch over.
I'll speak loudly.
No, you're good. You're good. Okay, so let's imagine. Let me go back. I had this in the presentation. Ta-da-ta, where's my presentation? Here we go. So let's imagine that we want to create an AI SDR agent. What I mean by a sales development rep. A lot of the sales development rep work is like, we have a lead. Should we actually talk to this lead? Right? Now, every company does this differently. And one example might be like, hey, let's build an agent that will go to Apollo, read our policy, read our ICP, which is, what does ICP stand for? Ideal customer profile. And then says, yes or no, should we talk to this person? So we already built an agent that can update Airtable. So I have this field in Airtable, which is qualified or unqualified, and then reasoning. Like, why did we qualify or disqualify? Instead of having a human go in and like run, all this information, fun fact, it actually already ran. I have it up and running here. So it said qualify. I actually need that, turn that off, or else we're going to be qualifying double. That's okay. So what if we had an AI agent do the first pass around qualification, and then we can have the Airtable agent we just built update the Airtable, which it's really good at. So this, when I think about it, is a flow. Why is it a flow? Okay, because I have a very clear input starting point, new lead in Airtable, right? That's when I want to kick off. So we're going to go ahead and build a flow because we also have deterministic steps, right? I want to qualify, I want to update, and I want to send Slack update, and I want to update the Airtable. Now, the reason we're using agents here is that it's quite nuanced, right? To read the Google Doc, to update Airtable. So we think agents might be a better starting point, but the downside is we're gonna have to iterate, right? We're gonna have to like work on this because they might make a mistake, they might stop. So agents and flows are not a solve for everything, but they are sometimes easy to start with. And what you'll notice, or what we've noticed in a lot of organizations, is you build these like core agents. Like Gumball is a core agent at Gumloop. So I can have a flow that uses Gumball, and then I can have another agent, which is like my Airtable updater, right? Which I've worked on for years as well, or for not years, it's not existed, for a couple of weeks, right? So I know that it works well. And then you could use those nice, cool, well-built agents in your flows. So let's build that. For folks who are new to AI automation, this is going to be a lot of information at once because we're going to build a flow. You're going to learn about nodes, but we have Gumloop University and cohorts. So gumloop.com/university, where I break this all down, and also gumloop.com/cohorts, where it's a week-long learning session where we talk about flows and agents all in one. So
amazing. And on that note, Aaron, people are also asking, like, all the agents that you're sharing today, we'll be able to share like some of the prompts with the recording, are also like templates. Is it possible to like import an existing flow or agent into your Gumloop account?
Yeah, so we have a directory of agents, of templates. A lot of what I've built today is here, and I'm going to share specific agents that we've built today. But highly recommend checking these out. We've got some folks in the chat who have built them. So Zachary, I think, is in the chat. He's only got one flow. He's got to put a little bit of work.
Lift your game, Zachary. Come on.
Yeah, come on, Zachary.
Five more flows after tonight. Hopefully.
Minimum. And so, yeah, you can build those. You got two waiting for approval. Hey, my bad. My bad. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so let's build an agent in a flow. So let me go back into Gumloop right here. So I'm going to save this. So this is, let me call this one Airtable Updater 9x. Like we've just built this agent. So we're going to repurpose it, right, in our flow. So let me go back and let me go into flows. And then let me turn off this trigger because that's, you know, this was the test that I had building yesterday. So I don't want it to run. And let me go back and build another agent. Another flow, I should say. So we're going to go into flows and we're going to create a flow. Great. So if you've ever built automations, we have a blank canvas. Now let me go back into my little presentation. So first step, I always recommend folks build like a chart, like a flow chart of what they want to build. So these all together we'll call a flow. In each individual step in Gumloop, they're called nodes, right? So nodes are the individual steps in your automation and flows are the automation themselves. So, okay, let me close out some tabs that we don't need anymore. So what is my first step in my automation? I want to kick this off when a new lead is added to Airtable. So I'm going to go into my node library on the right. I'm going to look for Airtable. And I'm going to go Airtable reader. I'm going to read an Airtable base. I'm going to bring that onto the canvas. Okay. So now we have our first step. So which base do I want to go to? Mine is called Sales CRM. I'm going to be reading the contacts table. And I want to read on all contacts. Now, Jan, I'm sure this is weird to you. Why is there a trigger? Why is there an on-off for triggers? In Gumloop, as opposed to a lot of platforms, you can read full lists. So I can actually click run, and it's going to read all records in this view. And you might say, like, what's the point of that? Why would I run flows not on a trigger? If you're not an automation person, just ignore what the chat Jan and I are going to have for the next 2 minutes. So Gumloop supports lists. And what that means is you can run agents or steps in a loop. So let's say you want to enrich 1,000 contacts. You can do that in Gumloop, right? So you can run your flows in a loop. If you are interested in more advanced stuff like that, things like subflows, which we won't get into today, recommend going into university or joining a cohort. We have one starting on Monday. It's week long. You'll cover everything, and you'll be an automation expert by the end. And some folks mentioned certification. We do send 2 certifications during that session. Okay,
And I guess, Aaron, one like useful part of this would be, because typically whenever you're setting an agent like this up and saying, hey, every time a new lead comes in, I want it qualified. But typically at that point, you probably have already had maybe 150, 100,000, yes, whatever many leads already go. And you also should run this new qualification agent against some previous data. I guess, is that sort of the position where you guys decided to come up with this method?
Yes. And the other part, again, boring stuff here, but like, if you're Zapier, why would you ever loop, right? Like, what's the value of having a list? Well, guess what? It's pretty cool to be able to say, read my Google Sheet, give it to AI, and run me a report.
Yeah.
Right? In Gumloop, you can do that in like a 2-step process. Now, fun fact, if like you're like, oh, I don't want to learn how to build, or Gummy can build full flows for you. So today it doesn't support agents, but it'll support every other type of node. We're working on adding agents in. It's a little more complicated. It's a little meta to have agents build agents, but we'll get there. Okay, I'm going to turn this on as a trigger. And now this is saying every time a new record is created in this table, run this flow, right? Let's go ahead and say, okay, well, what is the next step I want to do? I want an agent to assess whether or not this is a good lead. What we're going to get their email. We're going to get all the data from the record, right? So I want to use an agent for that. So let me go into agent. And let's actually create an agent from here. I'm going to create an agent. Do we have time? Yeah, we got 20 minutes. Ah, very easy. Okay, so what do I want this agent to do? I want it to go to Apollo. So Apollo is an enrichment tool. As I mentioned at the beginning, in Gumloop, you have access to enrichment tools on our credentials, right? So you don't need an Apollo enrichment kind of API key or anything like that. Let's add in Exa. Exa is kind of web search. And then, oh, right, I had prepared this. I have an ICP document. Like these are the types of companies Gumloop wants to work with or your company wants to work with. This is much easier to update than like, having 12 criteria, what's their title? Oh, their title isn't right. They're using their Gmail. There's a lot of rules and waterfalls. Let agents take care of that, right? So let's go here and let's go, okay. So you are an SDR agent and your role is to qualify leads. Use Apollo and Exa to understand the contact's, title, role, and company details. ICP is ideal customer profile. So use this ICP document to evaluate fit. Okay, so I'm going to save that. I've just built, I got to give it access to docs. ICP is ideal customer profile. But it could be whatever. It could be like, any document. Like, whatever your rules for qualifying. Oh, yeah, can I share the ICP document? Yeah, absolutely. Anyone with the link? Man, agents are so fun. I could do this all day. I could just build agents. Super fun. Like imagine how much time it would have taken us to build nodes for this. Like enrich the contact. What if it doesn't find anything? Go to Exa, create the node. Oh, what if what happens? And they're way faster to build, but they are iterative. That's the drawback here, right?
Absolutely. And I think we had a great question from early on that I mentioned I would bring up, asking about like, if, for instance, we can set up an agent that is quite deterministic in terms of the instructions we give it, is like do this, then do this, then do that, and then do that. And then they were asking is like what's more effective from a credits point of view, is obviously setting up a flow versus setting up an agent. And what we always like to do at 9x, I don't know if it's the same way you approach it at Gumloop, is setting up agents are great for like rapid prototyping and getting something up quickly. While you're still not sure what is the process going to be. Have we figured everything out? Have we figured out our qualification of sales? Is our ICP the right one? Once you get something and once you start reaching certain scale, you can convert that into a flow to then potentially save credits and consumption. But for really like rapid prototyping, just explaining what you want the flow to be in plain language just allows you to build things so much quicker.
I 100% agree. Yeah. And then, yeah, that's exactly how, and like we're thinking about how can agents figure out that they themselves should be building flows, right? Or even like execute code. That's actually probably going to come faster for us, where if we notice that we're always calling the same endpoint in Apollo, we can actually create a little code sandbox that queries Apollo without using MCP directly. So it's easier for the agent to write code to query Apollo, and it's cheaper than it is to like use MCP endpoints every single time. So that's probably going to come first. And I can show, if we really want to get geeky the last 5 minutes, I can show we have MCP node creation. So we've actually already built that functionality in Gumloop. It's just a question of bringing it to agents.
Super cool.
But yeah, I agree with you 100%. Cool. So we've just built our agent. Let me give it a better name. So this is going to be SDR agent 9x. Right. Let's go here. Let's close this out. And now, essentially, remember that little chat box we had, in our kind of Gumloop agents? Do I have one open? Is this an agent? No. No agents. Okay. Well, you get the point. Now I can say, okay, I want the data from this record, right, from this node to be in the prompt. So I want to say, evaluate the following contact. And this is going to be dynamic. So I want to bring information from a previous step so I can connect. And now I can say, let's go ahead and grab their email. And boom, this is going to go ahead and give us a response, right? So the output is going to be a response and all the messages. So now we can pass that over to our Airtable updater agent. So I'm going to add in another agent. Now, this is one of those where probably you don't want to use an agent, right? Like updating Airtable feels very inefficient, right? But we just set it up. So let's get our, get our workflow running, and then we'll kind of worry about the details, as you said, Jan. Like we'll iterate on the flow. Okay, let's go ahead and say Airtable updater 9x. I'm gonna pass in. I'm gonna say update the, what did I call it? The qualified field in the contacts table to qualified or unqualified based on the assessment of the agent before you, and add a summary of its reasoning to the AI reasoning field. Now I'm going to pass in, so assessment. I'm going to go to response. And now I can either do full thinking thread. So like everything the agent thought about, because sometimes the final message is like, do you agree? Right? That's like the final message.
Yeah.
But we can pass in all messages, right? So the whole thinking. Can we write prompts in other languages? Yes. AI speaks all languages. And let's go ahead and send a Slack message. And this is going to be deterministic. I might have some, I'll set this up as we go. Let me use, do I have Gumloop demo? No, it's community. Okay, I'll just use currently Gumloop, and then I'll just do creators experts. So we're going to send the Slack message. So new lead has been assessed. Now I'm going a little quicker, obviously. If you want to learn all the details of everything I'm doing, feel free to join a cohort or one of our courses on Gumloop University. I'm just going to pass in the email of the lead. And we're going to do assessment, right? So we're going to connect the assessment like so. Did I connect? Yeah, here we go. The SDR agent save. Okay. And just like that, what does this flow do? Where did I miss that? Okay, yeah, I didn't use the Airtable updater. I don't need this one. Do I need to? No, I don't. Actually, no, I don't. I don't need that. Great. Got it. Thank you for that notification, Airtable. So some folks are saying this is more confusing. I don't, we're just saying, hey, new Airtable lead comes in. Let's run the agent. Let's update Airtable. Let's send a Slack message. Let's go ahead and run this flow. And how do we run the flow? We're just going to go ahead and add an Airtable record, a new contact. Now, who do we want to add? Let me go ahead and say, who do I like to use? Let's use, let me do Aron.Korenblit at webflow.com. There we go. So I've created a new record. This should trigger my flow. Now, Gumloop runs the way we do with Airtable as very other applications. We run every 2 minutes. So we check for new records every 2 minutes. So Jan, if there's some questions, now is a good time because it might take a few minutes to run. Oh, there we go. It's running. Well, we can still answer questions.
Perfect. I think we're so far so good.
Okay.
Majority of the questions were on the different integrations. I'll look back through.
Great. So just we're seeing the run. So we read the Airtable record. So I can view, okay, we're running for myself when I worked at Webflow. Now we have the SDR agent running, right? And we're working on making this visible. So eventually, like later this week, you're actually going to be able to see all the tool calls and everything it's doing, right? And then once it's created an assessment, it's going to go to the Airtable updater.
And here, Aaron, if there would have been 10 new records in Airtable, this would run for all 10 of them.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now that would have, on a trigger, it would have run in 10 different flows.
Gotcha. So you
can, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you could do as well, turn this off, put everything into loop mode, and you could run on 100 records in Airtable, right? At once. Yeah. So you can backfill.
Super nice.
So it's going to take a couple minutes, right? So it's enriching, it's doing all the things. So always a little challenging to demo. because you have to wait. Uh, cool, cool, cool. Okay. So we just wait now, I think. Let me answer some questions we see in the chat.
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions around the coupon code, but I guess so some people trying it on the solo plan but doesn't apply any discounts. Does that need to be written a specific way? Like is
Good question. Let me
the
check the
geo is
Stripe. Let me check. I don't think coupons are. So if there's any issues, we'll create the Go 9X. Let me just go check coupons, who's used it.
yeah,
Okay,
we've
I
got
already
some
see 30
confirmation from
redemptions, so
others.
that's not a
Perfect.
problem. So the exact is capital Go 9X, like that. Okay, let me go back to the flow. Oh, great. It worked.
And I think
Well,
you
I mean,
might
I'm not.
need to share your screen again.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, perfect.
There we go. Okay. So, Airtable reader. Well, let's see what the agent said. This is the SDR. Boom. My role is to qualify leads. I need to blah, blah, blah. And it's done. Wow, it did a lot of tool calls. Right? So let's see what the
Well,
final response was. Excellent. Let me scroll down here a little bit. There we go. So this is one challenge I have to say I love about agents. Actually, this contact is you, not a lead, according to LinkedIn, right? So it's I gotta figure something out. Uh, uh, so ICP evaluation. It said good fit, perfect. So the SDR agent correctly qualified me as a good fit. Now let's see what about the Airtable. Great, I've made the update. I've set the qualified field to Air. So if you go to Airtable, boom, we see qualified, strong fit, last updated. And then if we go over to Slack, it said the ID. So let me just open that up. I'm going to share a different screen. Creators, experts. Creators, experts. Okay, let me just share a different part of my screen. Sorry, I got the app open. Apologies. Let me share Slack. And then we have that message, right?
super nice.
So we again, that was 10 minutes of work, right? We built the agents. And from here, you're exactly right. Like, is this the most efficient way? Probably not, right? But then you can start thinking of like, okay, what do we want to remove? And frankly, even if I look at the credit usage, if that's the kind of evaluation, we have Zachary in the chat. He's the credit hawk. He's always talking to me about credit usage. 132 credits, 117 credits, right? And this is not extremely efficient in terms of how we've done it. However, like we went to Exa, we went to Apollo, we've used, Sonnet in each one, right? For me, the time it took to set this up versus the value is extremely useful, right? You have to remember that your time is extremely valuable. Now you don't need to qualify these leads anymore, and you're getting external data and access to your internal data, and it's set up and it's running, right?
Super nice.
Five agents. That was 5 agents, right?
I know.
I think so.
We
Maybe
we're
four.
going through so quick. I've lost track. We've got a really good question from Jesse. How does the SDR agent decide what and when to use Apollo versus Exa? And you even saw that before that it had quite a lot of tool calls because we
Yeah.
used quite a simple agent prompt. I guess we sort of leave it up to the interpretation a little bit, but that's something that you could hone in.
Yes. So there's a few ways you can change it, right? So let's actually go into that agent and like look through the conversation. Again, we're going to make this easier in the sidebar in a moment. Let me go into Gumloop. Let me go into, I'll call this SDR agent flow 9x so I can remember to send this to you guys. Let me go back. Let me go into agents and the SDR agent is what we're looking for. Let's look at the kind of what it did, right? So first it it read the Google Doc, it enriched the person, enriched the organization, searched Exa, and in this case, I can say, hey, if you feel that you have enough information for Apollo, don't make the tool call, right? But for me, I'm like, it's running in the background. I don't really care, right? Like there must be a reason why you're like, why would I want, and you might be credit usage. I would actually argue that a better place for credit is to reduce the model to something like Haiku, right? And, ultimately from there, it's a question of like, how do you want to optimize?
Yeah.
But for 100 credits, I'm like, it's pretty cheap, right? So Haiku will bring that down a little bit, but the fact that it runs in the background, I'm not so worried about tool calls. Whereas if someone is waiting in Slack, that's a little different, right?
Yeah.
But the way to edit this is here. And then if you really, really want to be super efficient, you can turn these into flows where you
Absolutely,
just
yeah.
retrieve. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And what was cool here, which I didn't, I'm not sure we got to explain, but any agent you create in the flow, you can also access in the agent
Yeah.
sections, like
And any
globally.
flow as well. So
Yeah.
you can add, we call these like set plays,
Absolutely.
right?
And I think that
So a
also
good,
solves the case you mentioned before. If you ever want to, of course, the way you've done it is way quicker to say, hey, here's a Google Doc, read the Google Doc. But for
yeah,
instance, if you want an agent to only read the one specific Google Doc, you could create a flow for it. And in the flow, you say, hey, you only have access because there you have this resource picker.
yes.
That's like another way. And I think a few people were commenting on the use of Google Docs here versus what, like, can we upload files? Maybe they're coming from the sort of a custom GBT world. What I really like about the Google Docs approach is that it's because in the Google Docs, you're really like putting in your company like standard operating procedures and your company knowledge, what we call like
Hmm.
codifying your knowledge. And that is something that changes all the time. And what you'll probably
Yes.
have is 5 or 6 agents reading the same document because they need to know, like, how do we get things done? And whenever how we get things done changes, you just update the Google Doc. You don't need to go into
Yep.
5 agents and change their settings, right?
Exactly. And there's a question on a reg. Like,
Yeah.
we are going to allow like storing tools, docs as part of an agent, but that connection to the live doc is really important to us, right? Because you're right. We don't want people to be like, oh, did I remember to update the instructions? Did I like refresh this document? However, we do want to make it simpler so you don't have to remember to add the Google Doc link to the instructions. So we're like aware of all of those kind of like getting over the hurdle. But like, Jan, I don't know, I've been at Gumloop for a year, and what it was a year ago is like night and day with what it is today. So I'm sure I'm going to come back in 3 months and be like, everything is like it's better, right?
Yeah.
And I just love building agents. They're so easy. They're so fun. So yeah, we are working on making that document connection a little clearer. But you're exactly right. We want to keep the live update of the data. That's super important to us.
Yeah. Super nice. Zachary's got a
Cool.
recommendation there. If you could just replace the system prompt with a Google Doc or Notion, that's his cherry on top.
That's a problem because then Zachary would be using more credits because it would be a tool call. So you have to be consistent here, Zachary. You can't be the tool hawk, the credit hawk, and then
Yeah.
want some stuff that
Oh,
yeah. So
amazing.
someone
I
just
love to
said,
see this message from San Diego. Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
yeah, just created a financial modeling doc with yeah, exactly. It's super easy. And then think of it as a like a starting point, and then you just kind of build from here. So go use your 10,000 credits, go 9x. Question from Emily, best recommendation before leaving. Like the one only thing I've been saying for weeks. Start small. Add a doc, chat with it, then build, add a few more tools, see how it reacts. Um, Bring it to Slack, show it to a teammate. Do you like using this? Oh, great. Like we need to build a flow. Let's start building that. Let's learn a little bit. Like we've never lived in a place where automations are easier to build. And I think, unfortunately, I think Jan, I really appreciate the work you're doing around fighting against this. Is like so I built a 12 agent. No, it's a while loop. It's just you talk to it, it gets better, right? You just remember that every interaction is an opportunity for your agent to improve, but you have to add it to the instructions. Your agent is not going to improve by itself, right? So ask it, how can you why did you do this? Right? How can you write instructions? A complicated tool, start with saying explore the tool, write instructions for yourself, read them. Do they make sense? Yes. Oh, you're never going to use this table? Write it, ask it, keep working on it. Uh, uh, um, it's never been easier. And there's some folks mention that it's frustrating. And yes, agents can be frustrating, right? Come back to that iterative approach. Why did you make this mistake? What can we add to your instructions? And I'm super excited to see what everyone builds on. It's like
Yeah,
super
absolutely.
fun,
And
super excited. Right on
100%. I
time
think
too.
the only recommendation I would add to as well is start building something that's like meaningful to your work, because there's, like as you
100%.
said, you will run into roadblocks and you will run into like frustrations, and what we often preach is you do need this experimental mindset. But I feel like if you're working on something that is actually going to make a meaningful impact in what you do, and if you're actually using an agent or a flow to automate a task that is like painstakingly boring and something that you have to do all the time, you're going to
Yeah.
have that extra motivation to get it over the line. And so I
Yeah.
really think it's like, look at the areas right now that will make a big difference to you and start with those, because it'll just give you that motivation you need to get the thing up and running.
Absolutely. And we have templates as well, gumloop.com/templates, where there's a bunch of inspiration. You can search based on the tools you use. Highly recommend joining cohorts, gumloop.com/cohorts. I'll be sending out invites. You have until the end of the week to kind of join Monday's cohort. Gumloop University, we have a studio. We use it.
It's cold.
We really, yeah, it's
It's
cold. So
cold.
we're shipping, this is like quite rare, as a Canadian to say that it's cold in San Francisco. But yeah, really appreciate. Thank you, Jan, for the opportunity. I'm so glad that I'm seeing already folks get some value from this, and just yeah, like, I don't know. I've been so excited. We've been doing this for a while. It just super excited to see what everyone builds, and can't wait to come back and can't wait to see what everyone builds.
Amazing. Aaron, thank you so much. This has been great. And everyone, thank you so much. We've got almost 150 people still with us after 90
Amazing.
minutes. And yeah, everyone, I'll say we'll see you next week, but we won't. Hope everyone has a wonderful end to the year. And we'll be back bigger and better in 2026 with more agents and more automations.